guest today is author of Our War, Volumes 1 and Volumes 2, which we're going to get into here in a little bit. Richard Maverick, what's going on, man?
Not much. How you doing?
I'm good, man. Thanks for coming on. I
Thanks for
appreciate you
having me.
sending me the books. Yeah, of course. I think you've sent me both of them.
Yeah.
And golly, I loved the first one. I really did. I loved the second one too. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying I don't, but you know, I loved the grittiness and kind of it was it was post-apocalyptic like, but not like that so far that it was like Walking Dead or anything crazy like that. It felt real. It felt like it was really happening, and we'll talk about the actual context of it without giving away too much here in a second. But first, why don't you tell those listening kind of who you are, where you're from, what your background is.
My name's Richard Maverick. I actually my background is more sales. I actually spent pretty much the last 30 years doing gun shows alongside my dad. And through that, I've man, the conspiracy theories that I've heard over the years are just phenomenal. I'm from upstate New York. I mean, we're in the gorgeous part of the state. I mean, the house I was living in at the time when I started book one, we had an 80-acre backyard.
Wow.
So that this is not New York like people think it is. This is wine country. Welch's started down, I believe, started in Westfield. I could be wrong on that, but I know they had a office in Westfield, New York, which is part of my old stomping ground. I used to hang out there with a bunch of guys when I was in high school. So um, beyond that, I could always tell a story. I guess I come along with being in sales and being in the military surplus business. I tested a lot of the stuff and played with a lot of the stuff that I was selling. So I always had a good story to go with it.
So, did your dad own a gun store?
We had a gun store for when I was a kid. Actually, when I was still real tiny, my parents had a gun store, and we ended up getting back into guns in New York State around, I want to say 2010. And then we got out of it right after my daughter was born in 2015, actually.
Okay. So, long history of being around firearms. Of course, that
Yep.
lends to a lot of the nature of the book, both books, actually. So, for those that haven't read it, you need to go pick it up. It's called Our War, Volume 1 and Volume 2. Volume 2 is going to be out this November, though.
Yep. November 7th.
November 7th. So, by the time you're listening to this, it's going to be available to order. You can go pre order it now. Can you pre order it?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Available to
Yep.
pre-order.
Available for pre-sale right now on Amazon.
Awesome. So, growing up around firearms, what was your favorite firearm?
Um, it's actually funny because when I was a kid, uh, BB guns, I had a great time with BB guns as a kid.
Oh yeah.
And when I got into high school, it turned into football and girls. And
Well,
it was,
not for everybody.
yeah, pretty much. And at the end of high school, I joined the military for a very brief amount of time. I ended up blowing out my right knee, and that was the end of it. So I got some hands on with M16s, M249s. And it was later in life where I really started finding my love for firearms and firearms training. So right now, favorite would probably in New York State's politically correct environment, my favorite would probably be my Sig 365 XL that I carry daily.
Yep, that's what I carry. I have the red dot on it as well.
I'm debating it. I really want one, but I just haven't flipped the money for one of those yet.
I'm glad I did it because um, it really improved my shooting. I know some
Hmm.
people kind of think, oh, an optic on a pistol's cheating, but you know what? Um, I don't.
If you ain't
I don't.
cheating, you ain't winning.
Yeah, there's no such thing as a fair fight. So,
No.
you know, I put the red dot on there, and then I put it on my MMP 45, which I've always
Mm,
struggled to shoot. I put a red dot on it, and I immediately started shooting it better. So then I put a light on the end of it, and it kind of balanced the weight. And oh my gosh,
mm.
now I shoot the
Shoot it even
45
better.
better than anything in my gun safe.
Hmm.
So, and normally I wouldn't put a light on there just because I don't know, I don't really like lights, but
I keep a light primarily on the nightstand gun, which for the longest time, Glock 19. I have debated getting one of the smaller stream lights for the SIG,
mm,
and for again because it's my everyday carry gun. So and they've made the technology on the lights has gotten so much better that putting a small 500 lume torch on the bottom of it, and it
yeah, it wasn't
still
like having
isn't.
the old flashlights that were this big
Yeah.
around sticking off the bottom of it. Now they're using LED lights and they can get them pretty bright in a very
Uh huh.
small device. But yeah, they used to just it looked like a really fat cigar sticking off the bottom of
Uh
it,
huh.
and you're like, okay, this is inconvenient. I think my like all time favorite would be the Remington 870.
Great, great guns.
I grew up
Uh,
with it. Shot plenty of doves with it.
mhm.
Bruised my shoulder more times than I can count with it. Shooting skeet or trap.
Yup.
Because on a budget, you can't. You
You
can't beat
beat
an
you can't
870.
beat the shotgun for a budget gun. Not at all.
No, it's excellent. And I don't have the one when I was a kid. I don't have it anymore. But the 870 was my first gun that I bought when I could legally buy my own firearm
Hmm.
from Walmart. Back when a lot of the Walmarts sold firearms and they didn't pull them off the shelves and all that. But yeah,
Yeah.
bought an 870 from Walmart, and actually I took the wood stocks off and I painted it black with that textured painting that you can
Hmm.
do the inside of your truck bed with, the truck bed liner.
Yup. Okay.
Now it's waterproof and indestructible.
Nice.
So
My first purchase I think was a Mossberg 500.
oh,
That was the shotgun I grew up with though too. I actually have my the one that I took hunting. It was an old 16 gauge Mossberg 500. I absolutely love that platform,
yeah.
and it's a lot like the 870
Hmm.
as far as that goes. They're rugged. They take a beating.
Yeah, indestructible.
Um, yeah, that 16 gauge I think is so old. I'm pretty certain I couldn't find a serial number on
Wow.
it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been around. I think
It's been
like
around a while.
if I really well, I take that back. I love my 870. It's probably one of my favorites. If I was to say like a favorite, like I would say my grandpa's Marlin 3030.
Oh, you can't beat those. The old Marlins were phenomenal.
Yeah, with the lever action, like
Hmm.
I think that's probably my most prized firearm because it has a lot of meaning to it. It was my
Hmm.
grandfather's. He took it hunting. It's a great brush gun, and it's been in the family forever. I think when I did research on it, the serial date was like, I think it was like back in '73. So
Wow,
yeah, it's got some history
it's been
to it,
around.
and yeah, so it's immaculate too. Like I don't know how it's
Hmm.
so immaculate. Probably because my uncle had it and just set in a gun safe. But yeah, I love that thing. That is the 870 and the Marlin. At 3030, you just
And
don't make any
you
better.
can't beat their performance from either one of them.
Right.
Good all around everything guns.
Oh yeah, 100%. So let's talk research before we get into the book. Um, First of all, when did you start writing? When did this idea come about?
The idea for this book actually came about long before I started writing it. I started writing in 2017. Finally, um, I had the idea to do it, but I couldn't seem to connect the dots, if you will, with it. You read the first one, it's extremely non-political,
Hmm.
minus a minor rant at the very beginning.
Yep.
But the book itself is non-political, and it's left extremely open-ended. There's no reason given for societal breakdown.
Hmm.
Uh, I came to early when I was trying to write in 2010 when I first really tried to write. Every concept, I guess, for a civil war on U.S. soil seemed politically driven.
Yeah.
And not only did I not want politically driven, um, I didn't want it to be such a one sided story. I wanted it to be something that anybody, regardless of a political view, could sit down and read and say, okay, I could see that.
Right.
So it was very hard to come up with a concept to keep it non political. It wasn't till years later that it dawned on me, and that's right around when I started writing it. If if there was a civil war, would I actually know why the first shots were fired?
Good point.
I would know what the news told me yesterday, possibly even that morning.
Hmm.
But we all know that the news is pretty much 99% one sided.
Yeah. Yeah. Unfortunately, you are you are correct. Depending
Yeah.
upon what slant, what angle you really want the news to come from is
Yep.
dependent upon what channel you watch, what
Yes.
podcast you listen to, who you follow on social media, et cetera, because um, it's being fed to you in a manner in which they will, hook you in and have you continue to come back because it meets your interests. And
Yep.
um, I don't really like to watch the news, man. I try not to just because of that. I can't get the facts anymore. So,
It's been
um,
about 3 months. I used to get up every day and watch the news first thing in the morning. And occasionally at night, I'd flip over Tucker Carlson. I'd flip over to his program. And it's been about, I think, 3 solid months now that instead of my morning cigar has been on the back porch with my coffee, with the sounds of birds and just ignoring the news. It's surprising how much happier,
right.
because you're not being dealt that early morning depression,
Yeah.
which is the spin on everything.
I think that's the only thing they maybe all have in common is that they're all negative.
Yes. Oh God,
they can't
ungodly negative.
say, they can't say, even like, for example, CNN. CNN cannot say something nice about Biden or the Democrats without saying something negative about the Republicans and Trump.
Yeah.
And vice
Yes.
versa, to be fair.
Yes.
Vice versa. And it's like, for the love of God, could you guys please say
Just
something
stop.
decent without
Yes.
saying something bad behind it?
Say something to bring Americans back together as Americans.
Oh my God, yes. I mean,
And that was one of the realizations, and I gave the main character my personal thoughts around chapter 3. That this war was possible because Americans just couldn't get along anymore.
which is a lot about kind of what it leads into.
Yeah.
At the end of the first book, you really start to understand that, like, oh, we still don't know really what's going on, but it's pretty
Hmm.
clear that there's factions. There's
Yeah.
groups of people just trying to survive, and
Hmm.
because of some of the conflicts that you wrote about, that there's groups that don't get
There's
along,
groups.
but
There's going to be groups, and there was a character written in who found himself forced to join a group that he wouldn't have necessarily joined with, but it was that or he was going to be killed.
yeah, not
You
a lot of
know,
options.
no.
So 2017, this kind of starts coming together. Did you know it was going to be multiple books? Did you think you could get it done in one? Once you got the ball rolling, what did the developmental process look like?
Oh, that was slow. It took me about 3 years to write the first one. And a lot of it was, I wrote the first couple of chapters. And of course you need Wi-Fi to save anything in Microsoft Word anymore. And where we were living at the time, there was no Wi-Fi. So I'd go get that little prepaid power pack, and then my computer would want to update, and all of a sudden I have no gigs for writing. And I'd write on the weekends when I was at hotels, and then there were the times where it just, I looked at it and I said, who wants to read this?
Right.
And I would stop, and about 3 months later, I'd say, oh my God, I got this great idea, and I'd start writing again. So it took longer than anticipated. The idea originally, about halfway through, I said, maybe I'll do 5 books. And when I got done with the second one, I looked at it and I said, oh my God, I've got this set up without a doubt for the third one. I've got a potential setup hidden here for something that I don't even have to do ever if I don't want to. But when you look at it, it could really take on 10, 15 books easy. And at this point, my feelings on it are, the day it starts to feel like a job, then I'll probably just kill off all the main characters and start something different.
Yeah, just drop a nuke on
Yeah,
everybody and just say, "Oh,
yeah,
whoops."
yeah.
So, volume one is has a lot of open-ended questions, tons of kind of cliffhangers, so to speak,
Uh-huh.
because you're left, and this is kind of really why I liked it, because for a majority of the time you're left with a lot of questions and not a lot of
Mhm.
answers. You start to sprinkle them in along the way, but it's very clear that but towards once you get 3/4 of the way through, it's pretty clear. Well, I'm not going to get any answers.
Yeah,
This is definitely a
no.
teaser. Did you ever think that maybe you could make the books longer and combine parts, or was it deliberate where you cut it off for the
For
second
for
one?
for book one, it was about 2/3 of the way through. You had two of the main characters. They were making their way back to their home base, if you will. And the main character had that dream. And the minute I wrote the dream, I said, oh, I know how I'm ending this. And that's why I cut it off the way I did. And as you know from reading the second one, it's longer.
Yeah.
Um, and with the third one, I actually paid a little attention to word count with the second one, more so than I did with the first one, because I definitely did want to make it longer, but I didn't want it to be uninteresting either.
Yeah, I don't
And
like books that seem
drag.
long because
Yeah.
they want to be long. They want to be 450, pages plus.
Mhm.
Um, you can tell there's a lot of filler in there. There's a lot of, you know, descriptions about the weather and the room and two or three sentences describing the scene every single time you walk in. And it's just like,
Mhm.
okay, I feel like you're doing this just to bump up the word count, man. Like, get to the point.
Yeah.
I read books to be entertained, not to be, put to sleep.
Well, and it was a little different because, of course, it's told in the first person, both books.
Right.
More of a diary perspective. You're seeing it through the eyes of one. There's obviously one main character
Yeah.
surrounded by a few other main characters, but you're getting the story from him. And had I went more traditional storytelling, I probably could have. I could have had book one at that 400 plus pages, because you'd have been getting stories from the city of Gold Beach and stories from the one guy who wound up having to join a group of not so friendly people. But the diary perspective, that kept it a little shorter, and it was harder to fill pages that way too.
Well, it would have been
Uh,
a very different book, if it would have been in the third person, where you told it
mhm.
from, you know, everybody's perspective, where,
Yeah.
because you definitely could have, you know, talked more about, um, the prison.
What was going on outside of
Yeah.
that environment?
But I think in a way it wouldn't have been better, because that first person journalistic diary type of view is one person's account of what's
Hmm.
going on, and it leaves a lot of those questions unanswered. It leaves you as a
Hmm.
reader reading through it wondering what the heck's going on. That's what it
Yeah.
interested me, was that, you know, I'm reading it and I'm like, this is very, you know, this is very post-apocalyptic, Walking Dead, Civil War thing going on here. I'm trying to figure out what the heck is going on. Did the government collapse? Was there nuclear fallout? Like, I'm questioning the whole time I'm reading it, wondering what the heck is going on, just waiting for answers to kind of roll through, and it kind of slowly trickle in there. I think um, I think there's a tease in there, knowing that not only does Will's the main character, right? If I
Yep.
remember his name right.
Yep.
I'm reading so many books right now that I'm my memory is foggy. But Will, you get his perspective, but there's so many other people. There's all his team leads, and that's just in the
Hmm.
compound. There's so many more people out there down the road from the farm. His neighbors that he used to have, there's a lot of questions if they're alive. Um,
Hmm.
who's buying, where are they even at? Like, there's all these questions that I don't think you could have left unanswered if it was in
No.
the third person. I think that would have been a problem.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, it was interesting. It was actually when had first started writing it, I just started writing in the first person. And I had a buddy of mine read chapter 5. It was written in a notebook, and I carry a notebook everywhere I go. And I had him read it, and he goes, "Oh, first person." And I said, "Yeah, for now." And he goes, "No, no, no, no." He goes, "You might want to leave it that way. It could be a little bit of a niche for you." And that's why I ultimately left it that way. Um, Everybody, and what's neat about the story is you read Our War in volume 2, and you yourself could write your own version of the book based on what your character's experiences would be.
Yeah.
My best friend, who I based 2-5 on, he could literally write the exact same book, but from his perspective.
Hmm. Have you ever thought about that?
I toyed with it, possibly write, possibly a spinoff, and more so with a character that was introduced in book 2. After penning that character in, it's racked my brain bad, and it's one of those questions that again was left unanswered. Um, so I've been developing the character and maybe answer the question. But then I just keep wanting to tell his story too.
So let's talk about the characters for a minute here. Where did the character of Will come from? How'd you find that one?
Um, little bit of a he definitely has a lot of similar background traits to myself. Um, with book one, there was a lot of the writing with book one, quite frankly, was just trying to tell the story. I didn't necessarily know what I was doing. I hadn't read in forever. Um, so here I was writing a story that I really didn't know necessarily exactly what I was doing. I knew how to tell a story, not quite necessarily like Jack Carr or somebody does. Um, so I took basis. I took my background for the character of Will. Other characters, other of the main characters, based on some friends, close friends. We've all had firearms training. We've all, small military backgrounds here and there.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to keep the characters basic. I didn't want any of them to be some super CIA spy, Jason Bourne type thing, because those people exist, but what's the odds of encountering them in your lifetime during a post-apocalyptic event?
Well, and it also lends to um, kind of the intrigue is you kind of wonder if these guys are going to make it. You kind of
Mm-hmm.
question their abilities. Obviously they've survived and they've got, you know, they got the compound. You reference Maine a lot, so there's a headquarters. Like it's obvious they've pulled through. You even talk about some of the, I think, cattle and some of the other little things they've done
Mm-hmm.
to survive. But you still kind of wonder throughout while you're reading, book one,
How many of these guys are going to make it?
how are they gonna make it? What happens if they get
Yeah,
attacked? Are they gonna make it back? They're getting all full ballsy going off on a mission. You
yeah,
start to kind of, I don't know, almost be a critic of it.
yeah.
But I think that's the entertainment value. That's why The Walking Dead went on for so long. If
And
you
it's,
think about
it's
it.
so funny because everybody thought, "Oh my god, did you watch that episode?" No, no, I never watched a single episode of that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and
That's
that's
crazy.
actually it's
That's
funny
crazy.
because that's everybody's reaction when I say that. Really, you of all people?
Yeah, because this is kind of right up that alley. Is
Yeah.
you know fortifying yourself, protecting yourself from a threat that you know nothing about or very little about, but you know
Hmm.
that it is a threat and you're limited on resources, so you make decisions based upon that. And that's exactly kind of what The Walking Dead was. But what The Walking Dead did well was that even though it kind of told the same story over and over and over again,
Hmm.
you just, no matter what the characters did, you always kind of questioned if they were going to be next, if they were going to actually
Yeah.
pull out of it, if they're going to get attacked. So I think that was part of the intrigue of it. And I was at BoucherCon, last weekend, and I was talking to Kyle Mills. It was awesome to meet him. And for those listening, Kyle Mills he picked up the Vince Flynn mantle when Vince Flynn passed away, and he does the Mitch Rapp series. Kyle Mills is a fantastic author, even better dude. Was totally cool with his time, and me and him were talking about first and third person type of books and
Hmm.
who does it well. And Don Bentley does the first person really, really well. And the fact that he does his Matt Drake books in first person and then goes over and does the Clancy books in third person is really impressive. You know,
Hmm.
but it works. It works really, really well for Don Bentley doing the first person. And me and Kyle Mills were just talking about that. And he said kind of what I said a minute ago. There's some stories I don't think you could tell in third person. It wouldn't work.
Yeah.
And I think Our War is one of those books. And I don't think that's an insulting way of saying it. I think that's a very complimentary way of saying it, that I wouldn't want to read this same story if it wasn't through Will's eyes, the main
I've
character.
I I've thought about it, even after publishing the first one, I thought, well, what if I went back and changed it to that third person storytelling? And it wouldn't be the same.
No.
It just wouldn't.
No, I don't think you get the camaraderie between the characters, which I want to talk about. I want to know how you came up with some of the other team leads. I mean, but I don't think you'd get that togetherness, that feeling, that brotherhood that you kind of feel between them at all. So that's my next big question: is where did you come up with the rest of the team?
Guys that I know for the most part, took some personality traits. And I looked at it as a whole with the characters, and I looked specifically at me, my friend Billy, and my buddy that we call Beans. Um, we as firearms guys and outdoorsy guys, we're all strong in our own areas. The character of 2-5, which I based on my friend Billy, he's a very bushcrafty guy. I'm learning bushcraft from him because I went through Boy Scouts as a kid and I did military, and there's just so much more to it that I never knew about.
Mhm.
And so I've been actually for the last few years, working my bushcraft skills with him to get better at them. And that's where a lot of that came from, was looking at the three of us, and I said, and other guys that joined the team, if you will, later on, I said, okay, what would happen if you took three ordinary guys, or six ordinary guys in the case of the book, and put them in a ultimate survival situation? Now, what's more ultimate survival at that point than your country going to hell in a handbasket and killing each other in the streets? And there was just, how do I say it? There was real life experiences put in there. There was one day at an IDPA match where I just completely missed targets. And I said, what would happen if that was a real world situation? Oh,
Yeah.
okay. So I put that in the book.
Yeah.
That's where the character Will, he ends up getting shot
Yep.
because he missed the target. And that's exactly where that scene came from, was an IDPA match,
Hmm.
because it's possible.
Yeah.
Not everybody shoots like they do in the movies.
Oh no. No, no, not like John Wick has missed before. They didn't film
Yes,
it. He's missed. It probably doesn't
yes,
happen very often, but the best shooters miss. I mean, it's just
yes.
perfection is a fool's definition of success. It just
Um,
does not
it,
happen.
and distractions,
Hmm.
and I added distractions. I added potential. Um, when you've got a large group of people together and everyone's scared out of their minds, and what kind of problems can you have? You're going to have family problems, and I emphasized some family problems, especially in the I'd say first half of the book,
Oh yeah, you sure did. I felt
because
bad for Will. I was like, no wonder he drinks and smokes so much. It's like, my God, he
uh,
had two wives running around at one point in time. He was dealing with
yeah,
his ex, dealing with his wife. Just wanted to spend time with the kids. Like it was just problems mounted up. Every
and
time
it,
he
it
turned
was
around,
funny
I was like, golly, this guy's got to be in counseling.
when I first the first chapter were the introduction of his ex-wife. Um, it was I originally the yeah, in the notebook I wrote it as an ex-girlfriend, and I thought, no, that's just not dramatic enough.
Yeah, it doesn't have that
Yeah,
annoyingness, that pettiness, that
uh
oh
huh.
God, another problem type of.
Yeah.
vibe, whereas the ex-wife and then the wife, and they were both kind of similar in a way that they were kind of bickering at him. So it kind of
Uh-huh.
felt like he was getting a double dose of the problem, but him and his wife had those moments that were good times, and they connected. But the ex-wife was still around. I was like, oh man.
Uh-huh.
But I'm a sucker
And
for
in
drama, though. Like, if you ask my wife, I'm a sucker for drama. I love dramatic television. Like, it wildly entertains me. So when his ex-wife walked in, I was like, this is magic.
and how many, and give that situation, how many people have you talked to over the years who said, "Oh my God, if there's ever, uh, uh, shit hit the fan scenario, I'm coming to your house."
Yep.
You know, how many people have said this? So it's not unrealistic to think in any way that people just are going to show up that are not going to get along with other people there.
Oh,
Yeah,
100%.
they know you, but they might not like the person standing next to you in that moment.
Yeah, 100%. Very, very high
So,
possibility that you're in camp with someone that you don't like or eventually don't like and get along with. Like, just especially in a survivability scenario like this one,
mhm,
where there's a lot of insecurity, there's a lot of unanswered questions, what's going on in the world. There's a lot of worry just in their little compound about what they're going to do and how they're going to survive the winter, and
yep,
et cetera, et cetera. And that's just in this little compound on this farm. You haven't even talked about the rest of the state, let
rest
alone
of
the
the
rest of the
world.
country and the world.
Yeah.
So it definitely lends a lot of, depth to the characters. But what kind of research did you do for the first book?
To be truthful, none. Um, I've spent 30 years doing gun shows with my dad. So, I mean, that puts me, I started
Yeah.
doing shows with him right around the age of 10. And when I was 18, I was on the road for him all the time. And it was just me in the vehicle for, 4 to 10 to 12 hour drives. And, there wasn't satellite radio when I was doing all this. So, you didn't always have uh, music to listen to or shows or any of it. And it was not long after 9/11 that I wondered if it was possible for the country to deal with another attack that was so bad that all the dark ponies came out to play and just started shooting each other. So I start telling myself these stories to entertain myself for a 12-hour drive down to North Carolina by myself. And this week it was one variation of that story. Next week it was another. The week after that was another. So when I sat down and started writing the book, some of this is accumulation of things I've thought of over 20 years.
Right.
And then some of it was, okay, I need something to happen, a fight between the wife and the ex-wife.
Yeah.
I for whatever reason, deep inside me, I needed them to fight over something. And then I made the fight funny.
Yep.
From my perspective, I thought it was hilarious.
Yeah.
Um, and then it went back into immediate drama. So some of it was for the book, some of it was just right off the top of my head in the moment, but some of it was a variation of one story or another that I told myself, well, driving to North Carolina or Michigan or the other side of Ohio or New York or wherever we were going.
And that was part one with author Richard Maverick discussing Our War Volumes 1. And we're getting ready to talk Volume 2, which will release second part of this podcast on November 15th.